One thing I wanted to ask, particularly though, is that over the past couple of years, particularly in 2020, what struck me was the sheer speed with which the various assaults on the various institutions, say in Britain and indeed in America, happened. And it's almost like they were on some kind of starting block. And then after sort of George Floyd, for example, it was almost like it was like lighting a touch paper. And it was almost like it was a kind of opportunity to put into action something that had been boiling away for a while. I mean, does that sound about right to you?
Absolutely accurate. Absolutely. It had been boiling away. It had been boiling away in academia since the 70s. Things like critical race theory that a lot of people have heard about had been on the fringes of academia. It had, as I explain in the book, it had plenty of moments in the cultural mainstream. I mean, I don't like to only talk about academics because sometimes you can overestimate the impact of academics. Popular culture, in a way, is a much better example of it. I give an example from the early 2000s, book Stupid White Men by the documentary maker Michael Moore. Impossible to think of a book titled Stupid Black Men. And quite rightly, there's a chapter, Blame Whitey, again. Impossible to think of the opposite. Michael Moore just says everything that's bad in human history, you can trace it back to white people. I mean, he's never heard of most of human history, clearly. He's as ignorant as he looks. But this had become part of the culture, this idea that you could sort of uniquely beat up on white people, for instance. You could start to say things about white people we rightly don't say about any other race. People were racist about other people in the past. There is some residual racism today, but the only group of people you can just constantly insult for their skin color are white people now in the West, and that's been brewing up. But yes, you're right. It was waiting for a moment, and the George Floyd killing was definitely such a moment. There were several reasons for that. One was that we were all in our solitudes, of course, forced by our governments to remain inside our houses and unable to see our nearest and dearest, unable to meet friends, unable to sit in the pub and talk and chat with people and try things out, or have live events where people experiment with ideas and said, no, I think you're wrong on that. I think that we had already this isolation, which meant we'd lost all of our social antennae. And then suddenly this movement, Black Lives Matter and others, said, you're allowed to just kill black people in the United States of America. And I think most people had a moment of, even people like us who know America, like, is that possible? Can you do that? Really? Policemen just have the right to go and kill people on the streets if they're black? And of course the answer is no, absolutely not. Not least because the policeman who killed George Floyd, was responsible for his death, is serving a life sentence in prison. But as I say in the book, this was used as a way to claim that in America in the 21st century, black lives are so unimportant that black people can just be killed at any point. And that's just a total fabrication. And I give the actual statistics of what the realities are in this and what the realities of policing in America are in a heavily armed society. And they're nothing like most people think. The statistics show that the public view is totally wrong. But as I say in the book, we have this magic lantern-like effect where anything that happens in America, why we fight over the details, is that everything that happens in America, if you get even one of the tiny details wrong, because of the light that is behind America, when it's projected onto the wall of the world, even a tiny misapprehension, a misrepresentation in that model, when blown up on the world, becomes gargantuan and grotesque and appalling. And we have been persuaded in Britain to fall for this. Not just that it's a truth of American life, which it isn't, but that it's a truth of British life. And that was, as you rightly say, Peter, the moment where the revolution could go mainstream and did. It's then that people like the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, decide that they have their moment to set up their Robespierrean committees on not the public virtue. What was it? The committee on the representation in the of history in the public realm. Some similarly easy to trip off the tongue committee, and he appoints a group of people who all clearly, in different ways, hate Britain, to decide what our history should be. Include the man who, in Westminster Abbey, insulted and screamed abuse at the Queen and others, and then threatened to punch a black, as it happened, security guard escorting him out. The perfect figure for Sadiq Khan to appoint to a committee to decide what my history and your history and our nation's history is, or what it should be, who should be remembered and who should not. It's at that moment that people seized their opportunity to make the Cultural Revolution go mainstream.